Chavav. Our learning today, our class is being sponsored by Zisi Roskin, Le'iloi Nishmas, her mother, whose yahrzeit it is today, whose name is Miriam Bas Tzvi Hirsch. And I wanted to point out that Mrs. Miriam Popak, for all of her years, I think, from whenever she started doing this, organized the conventions of Neshei B'nai Chabad, and the Rebbe took a tremendous interest and had tremendous nachas ruach from these conventions, and there was a lot of back and forth about details concerning these conventions, and Mrs. Popek put her whole heart and soul into organizing these. And today, there's lots of different conventions and convenings and conferences, but it wasn't always so easy to organize something like this. And it was always in a different city, in a different state. And it really was a very important part of building the inner landscape, the spiritual landscape of Jewish women, and especially Chabad women. And so we want to remember her today. And like I told Zizi yesterday, I hope that very, very soon her mother will be back at work organizing the ultimate convention, Be'ezus Hashem. Today, we're also marking a number of other yahrzeits. Jane Marcus's great-grandmother, Neshka Bas, I can't read my handwriting, so let me look at my phone quickly. I'm so sorry. I wrote this all down and for some reason can't read. I'm so sorry. Neshke Bas Moshe, Chana Marlowe's grandfather, Reb Nisanel ben Reb Chaim Halevi, Elisheva's grandmother, Razel Tzivya Bash Maryahu, and also the yahrzeit of my husband's grandmother, Shena Liba Slava Bas Tzvi Hirsch. We are celebrating the third birthday of Chanala Stein's twins, Upshernish and birthday. She should have lots and lots of chassid shenachas from them. And Chana Perlman's husband's 75th birthday, La'arach Yamim V'Shanim Teves, and together they should have Laga Gebenshta Yarn, lots and lots of nachas and simchas. And for everybody whose yahrzeit it is today, this class and everything else that's done should be an aliyas hanashama for them. Aleph, Kasav HaTorah, the Torah, which was written by the Rosh, which is the forerunner of the Shulchan Aruch, writes, Shetov loymar, it's good, it's a good practice to say, as Parshas HaMan b'chol yom, to say, it's actually like the sixth aliyah from this parsha. I think it's Perek Tazayin, and it's a good thing to say that every day. V'tam hadavar mevor b'veis Yosef, and Rabbi Yosef Kara wrote first a perush on the Torah, and then of course his Shulchan Aruch, and he explains that the reason why it's a good thing to say Parshas HaMan every day is kedei sheyamin shekol mizoynesav ba'in loy b'hashgacha, in order to nurture our belief, our emunah, that all of our sustenance comes b'hashgacha elyona, it's divine providence, it's Hashem taking care of everything. V'hinei Rabbeinu Hazakim b'Shulchanai, and the Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch, and there are two versions. The Mahadura Kama is the first version that the Alter Rebbe wrote, from which is retained only very few sections. So in the Mahadura Kama of Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Hetik es Hadin shebetor, he cites this from the Torah, Im Hatam shebebeis Yosef, and including the reason that Beis Yosef gives, that this will build or nurture our emunah. V'haisiv is bir halavush, and he adds also the explanation of the lavush. Shechein Hashem ishgiach laseis l'chol echad oimer lagolgoyles, that in fact, just like when the man fell, Hashem gave each golgoyles literally means skull, but each person an oimer, a very specific amount, and l'chol nefashos beisai, and what was necessary for all the members of the household, that they measured in an oimer, and the one who took more than they were supposed to didn't have any extra gain from that, and the one that took less was not missing out. Aval b'mahadura tinyano shaloi, but then in the second version, sometimes referred to as a Madura Basra, in the second version of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Shina Rabbeinu Hazaken, the Alter Rebbe makes changes. Utmuras tam habeis Yosef alavush, and instead of citing the reason that the Beis Yosef and the Lavush give for why it's a good practice to say Parshas HaMan every single day, he writes, Kosav, O Parshas HaMan, Liftoyach b'Hashem, the reason to say, to recount every day this parsha, this story, this inyan, this concept from the Torah regarding the man, is in order to build our bitachon in Hashem, Nois and lechem dvar yom b'yomei, who gives us bread every day, every day. V'yesh kan shinu b'shnei pratim. So there's a difference in two details between the first version and the second version. Aleph, the first version is b'mkaim lashon habeis Yosef shiyamin kasav liftayach. Instead of what the Beis Yosef wrote, that this builds emuna, the Alter Rebbe wrote, this builds bitachon. And the second difference, he doesn't bring down what he brings down in the first version, that it's about Hashem's very specific supervision of everything that happens in our lives, which is expressed in the fact that the man came down in a certain measure for each person and for each household. But rather, but rather, what he stresses, what he emphasizes in the second version, is that it was constant, that it was consistent, that the man came down every day, and that concept, and recounting this arouses this bitachon in the constancy and the consistency of Hashem's feeding us, literally. And simply speaking, it would seem, and it is the fact that these two differences are they're connected to each other. This idea that Hashem was very involved and his oversight was very specific, and every person got a certain amount, and if you took more, you didn't benefit from the more, and if you took less, you weren't missing anything. Machazik es emunas ha'adam. This strengthens a person's faith. That our parnasa, that our sustenance doesn't come from our power, from our prowess. And here the Rebbe is citing the famous words from Ekev, that the Jews will start to say that it's our strength that created this valorous outcome. No, a person has to know, it all comes from Hashem. And as they saw practically with the man, with the man, like the pasuk says, they saw in real time, very practically, that their overtures did not change the result. If they tried to gather more, they didn't end up with more. And if they took less, they still ended up with the same amount that they needed. Aval inyan habitachon hu, but bitachon is a different thing. It's not just that a person believes in some abstruse theological way that everything that they need comes from Hashem, but you actually rely on Hashem. That for sure Hashem will give you enough of what you need. And this inyan of bitachon was learned from that what helped Jews understand this and integrate this lesson was the consistency and the constancy. Every single day they went to sleep, their cupboards were bare, and they went to sleep, and they knew that the next day Hashem would give them man. Ba'ifan tmidi, in unremitting fashion. Kach she'bnei Yisrael samchu legamri al HaKadosh Baruch Hu le'lo shum daiga chulei. They completely relied on Hashem with no worries whatsoever. Aval hadavar dairej bir b'haspara. But this needs explanation. Ma'u tam hadavar shebeveis Yosef bilvush val derech ze b'madura kama d'Shulchan Aruch Rabbeinu Zakein huva inin dikadei sheyamen chulei. So now this is the question that the Rebbe is addressing in this Sikha, the difference between Emunah and Bitachon, and why in the Beis Yosef and the Levush, in the Madura Kama, in the first version of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he brings down the inyan of Emunah, the Dafka b'Mahadur Tinyana, and it's specifically in the second version, sometimes referred to as Madura Basra, Shina Rabbeinu HaKasav. The Alter Rebbe changes his terminology. The Kasav Hatam Liftoyach B'Hashem Noisin Lechem Dvar Yom B'Yemei. And he says that it's about bitachon, and we learn this from the fact that Hashem gave bread every single day. Beis. Seemingly, there is place to say, Sheyesh Gam Nafkamina Lahalacha Ben Shnei Hataimim. So the Rebbe says, it's not just like, oh, okay, it's a change in verbiage, but seemingly there is place to say that there's actually a nafkamina, there's a difference in halacha, whether you're talking about emunah or you're talking about bitachon, ubahaktim. And in order to understand this, first the Rebbe says we have to preface. Aleph hachilukim bein emunah bitachon hu. One of the differences between emunah and bitachon is as follows. Emunah hu inyan tamidi. Emunah is a constant default setting. Hahanacha v'havadaus etel hamaymin. Shekenu hadavar kifi shehu maymin. If you're a believer, then you're a believer every day, all day, and you believe with a vadaus, with a certainty that this is the way it is. And so this person has constant faith, even when there's no practical outcome. This is just who I am. I happen to believe. And let's say, for example, in what we're discussing, the belief that all of our sustenance comes to us through very precise divine oversight and intervention. So it's not correct to say that a person only has emunah when he's at work, or when he's trying to balance his books, or when he's trying to take out a second mortgage. But it's a constant thing in his soul. Now, let's go back for a minute to earlier in this paragraph where the Rebbe says, "Umamela kayemes etzlo emunah tamid gam kishe'ein hi noiga'as lepoel." That this person has emunah always, even when there's not a very specific, practical reason that precipitates this faith. And here in footnote 13, the Rebbe gives us a way of understanding emunah versus bitachon. And he says, v'chein le'idach. And he says, and on the other hand, okay, so it's true that a person has this default faith, and he has it all the time. But on the other hand, emunah hi koyach makif. Emunah is an enveloping energy. It's transcendent. It is beyond you and surrounds you. But because it's not pnimi, because it's not integrated, because it's not internal, shelachein, gam kishenageh lepoel, even when there's a practical application, efshar li yais, it's possible that the practical application will look like this. Ganva apum machtarta rachamana karye. That before the thief burrows a hole into your home to steal, he cries out to God and he says, God, help me. I need you to be by my side. I need this to be successful. So in other words, yeah, he has emuna, he has a default emuna, but it's not pnimi, it's not internalized, and therefore, there's obviously a very clear case of cognitive dissonance here, or split personality. Like, God, please help me to steal. Okay. Masha came bitachin. But in contradistinction, there's bitachin. Masha Adam Soimech Belev Batuach Ala Kadosh Baruch Hu B'Parnasasai. This is not a theoretic belief. This is a person relying with a certain heart on Hashem, that Hashem is going to give him his parnasa. And this is something that wells up in a person, that is aroused in a person, specifically when they face a need. In other words, it's very visceral. It's very organic. Like, for instance, when a person is engaged in his work and he's trying to earn a penny, trying to earn his wages, Harehu Baiteach B'Hashem Asher Uvarechecha Hashem Elekecha B'Chol Asher Ta'aseh. He believes that Hashem will bless him in everything that he does. Of course, there has to be the B'Chol Asher Ta'aseh. There have to be your overtures, your hishadlos. You have to put in work, but Hashem will make there be a blessing in the work. Sha'Kadosh Baruch Hu bivada yivarech is ma'asav asakav ba'ofen she'yavi lo parnasa. That Hashem will certainly bless his actions, his business, in a way that will bring him parnasa. Or, kisha'adam nasun rachman al-atzlan be'ez sarah, when a person, God forbid, is faced with a tragedy or very difficult situation, ve'enai roya moitza, and does not see a way out, b'derach hateva. He sees no way out in nature, li natzel mitzara zu, to be saved from this tzara. Einai neifel lematzav shal yiush chas v'shalom. The person does not fall into despondency and depression, God forbid. He doesn't say, me'ayin yavai ezri, I'm giving up. From where is my help going to come? Ella hu batuach, baiteach b'Hashem. He is sure. He trusts in Hashem, shebi yosei balabayis alateva, because Hashem is the boss of nature, and Hashem created all the rubrics, and Hashem created all the paradigms, Hashem created all the rules. Asher biyadei l'shanis is ateva. And so therefore Hashem could change all the rules and change everything. Bivada yazarlei. And therefore Hashem will certainly help him. Asher ezri me'im Hashem eisa shemayim va'aretz. That the help is going to flow from Hashem who created heaven and earth. V'yeser al kain, and even more so, habitachain gufa hu hakli hamamshich es hayeshua me'es Hashem ves milui tzrachav. And note that the Rebbe underscores, so it's in italics, mamshich. More than visceral, organic, practical trust, the trust itself becomes the conduit, the vessel that brings down the Yeshua from Hashem that will fulfill his needs. Later on in the Sikha, we'll see a footnote where the Rebbe brings down Hashlech al Hashem, the next word, which means throw it on Hashem, put it on Hashem, V'hu yichal kalecha. And the Rebbe brings down a footnote that V'hu yichal kalecha, that etymologically kli is related to yichal kalecha. So the literal translation is he will sustain you. But V'hu yichal kalecha also means on a deeper level that he will provide the kalim. In other words, the kalim are part of what will come to you from Hashem, not just the brachas, but also the kalim. V'hu yichal kalacha. V'zeu echad habi'urim be'inyan midas habitachon. And this is one of the explanations of this characteristic of trust in Hashem. Delachayra ain't a move on, because seemingly it's not understood. Perish bitachon harehu sheyehudi b'teich b'Hashem sheyetiv loy b'toiv hanir v'hanigla dafka. What's the definition of bitachon? That a Jew believes that Hashem will make it good for him, and specifically in good that can be seen and that is revealed. Dahainu, this means. That in addition to the fact that Hashem knows that this is good for the person, nothing bad comes from above. So if it happens to a person, it has to be good. But bitachon means that we believe that it won't just be something that's good for us, but we're going to see that it's good for us. Like what we say on Rosh Hashanah, we don't just ask for Shana Teva, we ask for Shana Teva Mesuka, a sweet year. That we should be able, us little people, we should be able to see that it's good, that it's sweet. Seemingly, seemingly, it would seem that the fact that a person is in a tight spot, is in a difficult spot, is suffering some kind of travail, it's possible that it's because this person is not comporting themselves properly, and therefore they're getting punished. And if so, so what's the basis of you having trust that things are going to be b'tayv hanir v'hanigla? Maybe it's simply not what's deserving. Bitachon gamur v'amiti shepirusha she'ein etzloi kol sofek klal ad shehu b'menuchas hanefesh gemura. So we're saying that this person has complete and true trust, which means that he has no doubt, so much so that he's completely calm. He's completely calm, he's completely self-assured that Hashem will not punish him, even though he knows philosophically that the punishment would also be good. But this person has such trust that Hashem will give him toiv, hanir, v'hanigla, specifically that. I mean, it's a little bit hard to understand. How do you have that level of bitachon? And the Rebbe answers, Slonim has barabazeh. And we might say the explanation is as follows. Kasher ish Yisrael, mivate es bitchoinoi hagomor b'kadosh baruch hu. When a Jewish person expresses their complete trust in God, the davar pashut etzloi, and it is a davar pashut, it is simple. He has no doubt shakadosh baruch hu yetiv loi b'toiv hanir v'hanigla, that Hashem will grant him good in a way that is seen and revealed. Af she'ein zeh matim l'cheshbonos v'hasikuyim hativiyim, although what he is hoping for and what he is assured he will get does not align with natural calculations and chances and statistics. This trust, this complete and sincere trust, brings down from above that Hashem should behave with him in a reciprocal manner. Mida keneged mida, measure for measure. Because the Torah tells us that Hashem acts in a way that is mida keneged mida. V'Hashem meitiv loy b'toiv hanira v'hanigla mibli habeit klal ala cheshbonos imu roy lekach. And so when a person puts out this very special level of bitachon. Then there's reciprocity on the part of Hashem. Hashem is mamshich. Hashem, there is brought down the good that is seen and revealed without any connection to what should have been according to all calculations. If you look at footnote 20, interesting, the Rebbe brings down, Kol habayteach hu maimin. Anybody who trusts in Hashem is for sure a believer. V'hamaimin, but a believer, yitachin shelo yeh bayteach. But somebody that has emunah, it's possible that he doesn't trust. For instance, ki lefamim yari shema yigra machet. Sometimes he worries that because of his sins, he's not going to get what he deserves. We should all be on that level. At least I should talk for myself. Talking for myself. Yes, thank you, Elisheva. We're gonna take a moment to just process. Gimel. Mehanal move on. So for what was stated above, it's understood. Shenyana shall midas habitachin. That to understand the concept of this characteristic of trust in Hashem, Kilemar, his eres hamida bipoyel, the arousing of this characteristic in an actual, practical, concretized way, kashur in bakashas tzrachav, is connected to when we are asking for our needs. Kisha adam asuk bekabalas hadvarim shehu tzarech lahem. Harehu beiteach b'Hashem shehu baruch hu yimale oisam. When a person is actively engaged in the receipt of those things that he needs, that she needs. So bitachon means that you believe in Hashem, that Hashem, blessed be He, will fulfill the need that we need. Ba'al pizeh. Now the Rebbe is going back to what he said in Seif Beis, that there's a halachic implication. There's a difference between emunah and bitachon. And in order to understand that, first he prefaced with teasing out for us a little bit more the difference between emunah and bitachon. And now he says, V'al pizeh, and based on understanding this, and based on understanding that practically bitachon wells up in us, it's aroused dafka when we're actively in need of things, and when we stand to receive those things. Now we can understand lefi hatam shamiras Parshas HaMan hikadesh al yedei ze yisar adam liftoyach b'Hashem. So once we understand that the saying of the Parshas HaMan is in order to arouse that we should have bitachon Hashem, harei yesh mokem loymar sheParshas HaMan te'omer. Once we understand the difference between emunah and bitachon, we understand that Al Rebbe said in his second version, Dafka bitachon, then there's place to say that this parsha should be said, Aleph, first of all, Rak b'yemos hachol, only on weekdays, Aval lo b'yom HaShabbos, but not on Shabbos, she'ena hazman haroi le'idim bakashas rachav. Because Shabbos is not the time where we ask for our needs, which is why the Shemona Esrei on Shabbos is completely different than the Shemona Esrei of the weekday. Val derech hamon atzmai shaloi yorad b'yom haShabbos aval pisha hayadvar yom b'yomei, and this is just like the man that didn't come down on Shabbos, although it came down every other day. Beis gam b'yemos hachol, and then in the weekdays, when should it be said? Ein la'amar b'tchilas hatfilah. Shouldn't be said at the beginning of the prayer. And this is in line with what we find in general about asking Hashem for our needs. The Gemara says in Brachos that first a person should praise Hashem, and then they should turn to Hashem with their laundry lists of requests. Bakashas rachav, what they need. And as we found in a number of nuschais, we find in Sidurim that the Parshas HaMan is put after Tefillah, and is twinned with a special bakasha for parnasa. And in case you're wondering if why you somehow miss this, it's because it's not in the Nusach Hari, and therefore it's not in the Tehillas Hashem Siddur. In a footnote at the very end of the Sikha, the Rebbe says that the Ari did not put the Parshas HaMan in his Siddur, and therefore the Alter Rebbe did not put in his Siddur. So this would be regarding bitachon, because once we understand that bitachon has to do with what is aroused in us when we are practically and viscerally asking Hashem for things or in receipt of things. So we understand that this is only appropriate for a weekday, and we understand that it's appropriate at the end of tefillah and not to lead with that, because you're supposed to lead first with thanking Hashem, praising Hashem, and so on. But in contradistinction, if the reason for saying Parshas HaMan would be about Emunah, Efshala Amra Fila b'Shabbos, then you could say it on Shabbos also. The Gam Lefnei Tefillah, Sheyesh Ba Siddur Shvachav Shel Mokem, and you could also say it at the beginning of Tefillah, which is about praising Hashem. Ki ha'emunah b'Hashem Gam b'Shayches Limizaynosav He Inish Etzarech Liyos Tamid, because Emunah is a default setting. It has to be there always. Aval tzarich iyun bazeh. But we have to further understand this. Ki gam b'mahadura tinyana shabo hu v'hatam diliftoyach b'Hashem v'chulei. Because in the second version of Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, where he brings down that the reason for saying the Parshas HaMan is in order to strengthen our muscle called trust in Hashem. But there he says, Kasar Rabbeinu Zaken beferish toiv loymar bechol yom. Parshas HaMan. He says it's good to say this every day. Umehaloshen bechol yom mashma shagam yom Shabbos bechlal. So it's understood that this includes Shabbos. So if it's about bitachon and not emunah, why would Alter Rebbe say it should also be said on Shabbos? And even regarding the detail of where you would place this in the everyday davening, from the fact that the Alter Rebbe does not relate to exactly where this would be placed in the Nusach in his second version. The shachiluk hayachid biyachas lepsak b'madura kama hu b'negei litam ha'amira. The only thing he says is, the only difference is that he says why you should say Parshas HaMan. The difference is, in the second version, it's about bitachon, in the first, it's about emunah. But he doesn't address where it should be said. He doesn't address that there would be a difference or some kind of a limitation or parameter as to the proper place to say this. Ubifrat shagam b'mahadur tinyana kol al Rabbeinu Azaken is din amiras hamanim amiras Parshas Hakeda v'aseres hadibros Parshas Hakabanis she'ayimim koydem atfilah, and especially because in that second version the Alter Rebbe bundled mention of this along with the mention of saying Parshas Hakeda and Parshas HaKarbanos, which we know we say at the very beginning. In parentheses, we have Aseres HaDibros, which we don't have in our Siddur, but in other nuschais does appear. And so we're back to our original question. Mahu tam hashinui b'mahadura tinyana legabe hamadura kama v'abeis Yosef. What, in fact, is being underscored by the Alter Rebbe making this difference in his second version from the first version as to why you say Parshas HaMan. It's good to say Parshas HaMan every day. And by the way, if your mind works like mine, the first thing I was thinking was, okay, if it's good to say I understand it's not in our siddur, but should we still be saying it? And the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe brings down in Torah R from the Tzemach Tzedek later in the Sikh in a footnote, he says it's a good thing to say. It is a good thing to say. So it's not in the siddur, but it's a good thing to do. In Seif Dalid, The Rebbe says, "V'yuvon bahaktim" will understand the difference by prefacing Habir with an explanation. B'hanhagas Rabbi Yosei Saba. There was a Tana called Rabbi Yosei Saba, Rabbi Yosei the elder. Hamitur Eres B'Zoyar Parshasenu Behemshach LeInyan Haman, and his behavior is described in the Zohar on our Parsha. The Zohar was written originally as a commentary on Chumash, and where the Zohar talks about the Parshas HaMan, it mentions Rabbi Yosei Saba, and it says about him, Shahaya Mechin Sudasei B'chol Yom, he would prepare his meal every day, Rak la'achrei Shahaya Mevakesh Mizaynosev Mekadosh Baruch Hu, only after he asked for sustenance from Hashem. He asked for his food from Hashem. Ba'amrei, and he would say, Loi naskin sudasa, it's not proper to prepare a meal, or I will not prepare my meal, ad tis yahiv mibei malka, until Hashem will give it. Shelo yachin sudasei ad shetinasin leim eis Hashem. When Hashem gives me my food, then I'll prepare my meal. Okay, in the chat, we have a question. We already have an answer. It seems, I think, I'm imagining that Orit put it, although it says Israel Nation News, I don't know. So, Tzarech Hasbara. So this behavior necessitates explanation. Ma'achar shaha'eichel shemimenu hechin esudasai hayikvar b'shusai. The food that he was going to prepare his meal from was already in his. It was in his cupboards. It was in his rishus, in his ownership. And the only thing he had to do was actually prepare it, fry the egg. Like it says, he had the food that he was going to eat that day. Mahu haperush. So what is the explanation? What are we supposed to learn from this? What are we supposed to learn from this? That he would ask Hashem from the food that was already in his cupboards. We might say the explanation is as follows. Yedua bir Rabbeinu Bechaya b'maimer Chazal. It's well known that Rabbeinu Bechaya, when he comments on what the Gemara says, and that Rashi brings down, sheYosef ne'anash mishum shebikish misar hamashkim v'iskartani v'goymer el pare. That Yosef was punished for asking the butler before he left prison that he should mention his name. He should drop his name. He gave him his card. He said, "Please show this to the Pharaoh," and for this he was punished. Shechas v'sholem sheyitla Yosef hatzadek b'tchoinei b'sar hamashkim rak b'Hashem levadai. That God forbid the Yosef HaTzadik should link his bitachon, his trust in the Saramashkim. He should have completely hung his trust on Hashem alone. But Rabbeinu Bechaya explains, Abal Haisa Kavanosai, but what Yosef's intention with mentioning to Saramashkim, remember me, drop my name, was Shashem Yisbarach his min elav sar hamashkim zeh kidei sheyasel nes al yadai. It wasn't the Chas v'Sholem Yosef HaTzadik was not trusting in Hashem. What he believed was that Hashem put the sar hamashkim in prison with him and made him have a dream and made him look for interpretation, so that a miracle could occur from Hashem through the agency of the sar hamashkim. V'zeh Yosef ne'anash al zehu shebikesh siba b'sar hamashkim shal yada yishlach HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hatzala ve'ein ro'i l'tzadikim ki yotze bo levakesh siba. What was wrong with what Yosef HaTzadik did? That it doesn't behoove tzadikim like Yosef that they should look for a siba. For those of us who are familiar with the song by oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Favorite Hebrew singer, Sibat HaSibot, right? Oh, come on, somebody write it for me because it's going to drive me crazy, Hannah. Okay. Yes, Yishai Ribo. Beautiful song. If you don't know it, look it up. So Yosef was looking for Siba. He was looking for a cause. It doesn't behoove tzaddikim to look for the conduit through which Hashem will bring the salvation. Lekach nenash bazeh. But everybody, don't hyperventilate. Because if you're thinking, does this mean we shouldn't go to a doctor? We shouldn't go to a shadchan? We shouldn't go to a lawyer? We shouldn't go to an Indian chief? Wait. But now we're talking about Yosef HaTzadik. Okay? So Yosef HaTzadik shouldn't be looking for a siba. He should have been looking to the siba hasibot. Should have been looking just to Hashem. Lekach nenash bazeh. Therefore, he was punished because he should have been just trusting in Hashem. Shehu bal hasiba is kulan. Shehu yasmin elav hasiba mebli sheivakesh hu'isa. He should have just trusted in Hashem, who has all the reasons, all the causes, all the conduits, all the different vessels and the ways that he would prepare the right cause. And he shouldn't have been involving himself in it. He shouldn't have been looking for it. The hukshu al zeh. And there's a lot written about this that asks, Hare mivor b'chayvas halavavos. It says in Shar Habitachin, B'negei lemidas habitachin, about trust, shechiyuv hu la'asek b'sibos, that it is our obligation to find the right conduits, to prepare the right vessels. V'sham huvu kama rayas l'davar, and there it brings down even proofs. V'imkein madua nenash Yosef lefi shebikesh siba. So why was he punished? For looking for a reason, a cause, a conduit, a vessel. And it's explained. That brings down the different memorim. That there are two modalities, there are two levels in trust itself. Aleph. There's when things come down from above, garbed in nature. When what's happening is through the way Hashem interacts with us, with the aspect of Hashem that fills all worlds. Okay, so we know that there's Seiviv Kol Almin, sometimes called Makif, and there's Memale Kol Almin. So the light of Hashem, that's Seiviv Kol Almin, is untrammeled. It's unvarnished. It's infinite and transcendent. And then there's an aspect of this light that comes down in a way that won't blind us, that won't sear us with the heat, that fills the world, that we could say is up close and personal. And so when things are coming down from this modality, then our obligation is to find a cause and to make a vessel in nature. Because this type of beneficence and effluence from above comes specifically through the garb of nature. And the trick is for us to always remember that these natural means are simply a decoy behind which Hashem is doing his thing. But then there is a different modality. Kasharoyim beis, kasharoyim shanhaga milmaila, iba'ofen shenimshachim hadvarim shaloi al pi teva. When you witness that what's coming down from above, beneficence of Hashem is coming in a way that is not al pi teva. B'lashon haChasidus mitzat soiviv kol almin. It's coming from the light that is infinite and untrammeled. Azai nidrash oifen nale yoser b'midas habitachin. To harness this, you need a higher level in bitachin. lismeich legamre al hanhagas Hashem levadai v'shaloi la'asei shum davar kim liftoich b'Hashem shebetach yazar Hashem yizbarach b'derech siba. On this category, on this level, in this modality, you have to completely rely on Hashem alone and not do anything except for believe and trust that for sure Hashem will help, even with the cause or the vessel or the conduit that you need. V'Yosef HaTzadik, shehayakashur tamid b'avaydasei b'madrega shelamala mehateva. And Yosef HaTzadik, who was always connected to this level, that transcendent nature, hayatzarech lisnahig v'lamed ba'ofen hanala Yosef b'bitachon. And therefore, he was punished because he should have not involved himself in any of these machinations because they have nothing to offer, nothing to add, nothing to do with this higher level. Hey, here the Rebbe says that chiluk zeh ben beis ofanei habitachon, this difference between the two modalities of trust, kayim gam b'matzav sheboi oisim kli, they also exist within a situation where you are making a vessel. Zeh shenidrash ba'ofen ha'alev sha'adam yasa kli, ומishum shemitzad hanhaga milmayla kasher nimshochem advarim al pi teva yesh leteva u'ledarchei hateva tfisas makom. The fact that a person is making a vessel is because in this modality where what we need is being brought down, garbed in nature, so there is a place for nature and the ways of the temporal, the physical, the material plane. And so a person has to look for that vessel, they have to look for that cause, they have to look for that practitioner, they have to look for that person through whom the bracha of Hashem will flow. But in contradistinction, Misha Aymed Ba'ofen Hanala Yosef B'Bitachon, She'ein Tzarech La'asei Shum Davar Ki Im Liftoich B'Hashem. But the person who is standing on that second level, the higher level of trust, where there's nothing to do but trust in Hashem, Ein L'darchei Hateva Tfisas Mokem Etzlei Klal. The natural means take up no space. There's nothing, they have no connection to it at all. And so he doesn't have to look for a cause or a vessel. And therefore, and even when there is a cause, and even when there is a vessel for his parnasa, it doesn't bring his parnasa closer any more than if there wouldn't be a cause or a vessel. In other words, it doesn't figure at all in the calculus. Why? Because the kli, the siba, the cause, the investment, the stock, the therapy, the idea, the shatchen, whatever it is, it doesn't exist for this person as a self-standing existence, an independent existence. V'chol masharoyahu keitzad mekabelhu hakol ba'ofen yasher mekadosh baruch hu. This kind of person sees how everything is getting is straight from God. V'imkein harei gam hasiba v'akli im dvarim she'osek hakadosh baruch hu avori yachad im parnasasai. So to him, the money and the means to which the money came, it's one and the same thing. It's all Hashem. So now we're in a position to understand Rabbi Yesi, the elder, Sha'amar, Leinatkin Sudasa Adit Yahi Mibei Malka. Not going to prepare the meal until I get my food from Hashem. Af shahavale michla dahahu yema, although he had the food for that day in his cupboard. Rabbi Yossi Saba Hechazik ba'ofen zeh b'bitachon. Rabbi Yossi the elder was on such this high level of bitachon. Shera'a kol asiya b'fnei atzma loy kasiya shaloi. He saw every movement and every overture and every action not as an independent action that would precipitate a result. Ella kinesina me Hashem. But literally, it was Hashem. So even when the food was in his house, only one Ella, you could cross at the second, and all he had to do was prepare it. He did not relate to this food in his cupboard as his food, and therefore he asked Hashem, can you give me food? And then I'll make my meal. Because it's Hashem's food. Ella tisyav mibei malka. Rather, he waited for it to come from Hashem. So eichel shenoisen loy achshav hakadosh baruch hu. Now Hashem is giving it to him. Umemela olav lisha levakesh alzeh. And therefore he has to ask, he has to request, kamei kuchabichu, he has to ask from before Hashem, kishem, shemabakesh, al mezon yosef, kishe'ena echel b'veisei. In the same exact way as he would have to ask Hashem for food if it wasn't already in his house. This is where we have the footnote on footnote 49, K'yadua Perish Razal, Behu Yechalkalecha. Miloshen Kli. That the Kalim also come from Hashem. Vav. Ubazeh yesh liyashiv oid inyan b'hanhagas Rabbi Yossi Saba hanal. And with this we can reconcile another detail in the behavior of Rabbi Yossi the elder. Mistayemes loshen hazayar. The Zayar concludes with saying, Lo askin sudasa bechol yema adeva beusechule. He didn't prepare his meal every day until requesting his sustenance. Mashmas, what's understood from this, bechol yema shenaha keina filo b'Shabbos, that he behaved this way even on Shabbos. The ech yitachen shabikesh Rabbi Yossi kamei kuchabricho al mezayne afilu b'Shabbos. How is it possible to conclude or to understand that Rabbi Yossi was asking Hashem for food even on Shabbos? Because it's supposed to be that everything for Shabbos is already prepared before. Now move on. But based on the above, it's understood. Bakasha srachav she'ein zmana b'yom haShabbos. He dafka bakasha sheba ha'adam miskaven l'toivos atzmoi. The kind of bakasha that's not appropriate for Shabbos is when it's about our benefit, if it's for us, if that's the focus of the request. Hametzius shaloi, our existence, sheyimalot tzracha v'chesroinoi, that our needs and our deficits should be filled by Hashem. Masha ein kein Rabbi Yossi Saba. Not so with Rabbi Yossi the elder. Tfilasai ba dafka mishum shemitziusai loy tafsa makom etzlai klal. His tefillah, his request, came specifically from a place where his own self-existence was negated. Ad shehirgish al kol tzad v'shal shakol toli b'kadosh baruch hu. So much so that he believed in every action, every overture, that everything depended on Hashem. Ukimivor b'zayar sham, like the Zayar says there, shalanahaga zuk tziv, that about such comportment, such behavior, it's written in Tehillim, es hamiyachalim lechazdai. These are the ones who hope and await Hashem's chesed. Dimitzapon umechakon bechol yoima v'yoima lemiboim mizaynayhu min kuchabrichu. They hope and they await every day, for the food that will come to them, the sustenance that will come to them from Hashem. Hainu, meaning, shetaychen hatfilu hu rag bitui shel hamiyachalim lechazdai. That their tefillah is an expression, not a request, it's an expression of their trusting in Hashem's chesed. Hamargishim shehakol hu rak chazdai shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are people, this is a madrega, where you feel that everything you have is just the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So maybe you could say that this tefillah is not a request, but an affirmation of a truth. Hamiyachalim lechazdai. That I hope the chesed of Hashem. And this kind of tefillah, for your sustenance, mutar filo b'Shabbos. That is permitted even on Shabbos. Now, if you're thinking, okay, I'm not Yosef Atzadik, I'm not Rabbi Yosef Saba, I'm good. This does not have anything to do with me. Well, the Rebbe is going to disabuse us of that in a moment. Zayin, Behine. Although it's true that not everybody could be Rabbi Yossi Saba, it's not a one size fits all. It's not for pedestrians. But although that is true, but a tiny bit. These are words I think from Tanya. Shayach l'chol echad. We have to find a way to absorb a tiny bit of this, each one of us. V'al kol panim, and at least the Rebbe is giving us grace. Be'itim mizumanis, at least sometimes, to be able to integrate this complete hamiyachalim lechazdai. I'm awaiting your chesed. V'yesh we might say, maybe one way of making this practical and cutting it down to a size that we can eat is to think about this in terms of the difference between the days of the week and Shabbos. During the 6 days of the week, when a person comports himself in alignment with the Shulchan Aruch, the way it's explained in Shulchan Aruch, he should go about his business, and he should do his business in a faithful way, meaning al pi halacha, honest. Fu asuk binyane parnasa, and the person is invested in whatever it is he's doing for parnasa. Hare az bitchaynayhu ba'ofen shu mechabe siba v'kli. So then, in that modality, you are looking for the cause. You are looking up the best price. You're looking for the best cause. You're looking for the best vessel. You're looking for the best way to do it. Because really, it's impossible. Let's be practical. To ask a person to elevate themselves, to raise themselves above all the ways of nature and everything that's logical, and to put themselves on this highest level of bitachon. Masha'en can be a Shabbos, but in contradistinction on Shabbos, she'en a yom ha'maisa, it's not a day of action. It's a day where our default is that we're above our involvement with all the malacha of the week. So tzarich liyos etzlai. So a person has to have, meaning each person, all of us, al kol panim me'ein, at least something of ha'ofen hanala yoseh b'bitachon hamiyachal l'chazdai. The higher level of bitachon, which is, it's an affirmation that Hashem will do chesed with us. It's not a request. Based on this, might say, Shazehu bir achiluk bein b'mahadura kama v'hamadur tinyana b'shulchan aruch Rabbeinu Hazaken le'inyan amiras Parshas HaMan. And now the Rebbe is circling back to the original question of the Sikha. The difference between the first version of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and the second version. Es hamadur kama kasar Rabbeinu Hazaken lefi hachraz hagemora v'hapaiskim. The first version the Alter Rebbe wrote in alignment with the decisions that were made in the Gemara and the Paiskim, Nigla. And because the concept of trust in Hashem, as it's understood in the simple way, in the revealed aspects of Torah and the exoteric, is an aspect of trust that necessitates creating vessels and looking for causes. Hare ilu haya mevi b'tor ta'amal amiras Parshas HaMan is inyan livtaya b'Hashem chulei haysami rasane heges rak b'yimaisachol v'dafke lachrei tefillah. If he would have brought down as a reason for why you have to say Parshas HaMan, or it's good to say Parshas HaMan every day, it's because of bitachon, then it would mean that you only say it during the weekday, and you only say it after tefillah, as explained above. V'lachein kasav madur kama shetam amiras Parshas HaMan b'chol yom hu kedei sheyamin shechol mizaynosav boin loy bashkacha. That the reason it's good to say the Parshas HaMan every day is to have faith that all your sustenance comes from the hashgacha elyona, and then faith is something you could have every day, including Shabbos, as was explained above. Masha Enkein b'mahadura tinyana, but in the second version, Hiechriya kahamikubalim. The Alter Rebbe brought down the decision of the Mikubalim, Umemela, and therefore Harezek Kailel. Therefore, he's able to use liftayach b'Hashem bitachon, but that higher level of bitachon includes gam hanhages hashayachis lemadregas nalis yosef b'avodas Hashem. This includes also the higher level of avodas Hashem. Ulaficha kasav esatam liftayach b'Hashem noisin lechem dvar yomai. And that's why he wrote that the reason is because of bitachon, that Hashem constantly gives us every day the bread. Ki mitzad ha'ofen hanali yosef b'bitachon, which is hamiyachelim lechazdoi, because in alignment with the higher level of bitachon, which is that you're not requesting, you're affirming Hashem, that Hashem will give you His chesed. Yechayla liyos hamiras Parshas HaMan b'chol yom, gam b'Shabbos, v'gam lefnei hatfilah. So basically, the Alter Rebbe lifted us all up to this higher level, where even pedestrians like us need to tap into something, to some minute aspect of this higher level of bitachon, where you're not even looking for a kli, you're not even looking for a conduit. And that is a level that can be spoken of every day, including Shabbos, and also at the beginning of davening, because it's an affirmation, it's not a request. Okay. We